Hey everybody, in this video we're going to take a look at how we can create this cloning system in Unreal Engine Motion Design where each and every clone has a different logo on it. This is super useful for sports graphics, backgrounds, and things like that. I've got a lot of college athletics logos here, and the secret behind this is in the cloning material. And so we're going to cover a bunch of tips and tricks on this. If this looks confusing, if you haven't worked with Unreal Engine's material graph before, this is actually a really good starter project because you get a great result with very little effort. This looks more complicated than it is, and we'll just build this up from scratch really easily. So let's get going. The first thing that we need is a sheet of logos. So in this case, I have 81 logos. There are 9 across and 9 vertically, and we call this a sprite sheet in Unreal Engine. If you come from photography circles, this would be a contact sheet. So we need to generate this first. And I'm going to use a free tool called XnView to do that. So I've done this a few times already. I'm just going to go ahead and delete what I did before and take a look at here. I've got a folder full of there's 82 images in here now, but one of them is a previously created contact sheet that we see in Unreal here. Now, this is a free tool. You can just go to the website, XnView.com. This is not sponsored. It's just a tool that I use back from my photography days. I really like using it to browse through photos and directories. So in the download folder, there's a price list for commercial use, but it is completely available as freeware. And so, do donate or go ahead and buy a license because I really like this tool and I want it to be around for a while. There is a setup button here to download the installer. This is an advertisement. Don't use these download buttons here. And that will get the software to you. Once you have it installed, you can browse different directories in your computer and see lots of files very quickly. And in this case, what I want to do is use the feature here where it's create a contact sheet. So to do that, I'm going to Control A, select all of the images in this folder, and actually Control deselect this one. This is the previously made sheet. So now I have 81 images selected, and I'll go to Create and Contact Sheet. Now in here, I have a bunch of things set up. One, the dimensions are 4K by 4K. I have 9 by 9 thumbnails here. I want spacing of about 100 pixels between them. 99 is the highest value we can do here, so it ends up being close to 100. And then the margin around the outer edge of this resulting image is going to be 50 by 50. We need that 50 pixel margin around the outer edge so that everything's evenly spaced and none of the logos are touching the outer edge of our result. So with these settings in place, there is one more thing to make sure of, and that is that the background color is set to something. Double click. There's no transparent alpha option here. So that would be my main enhancement request, by the way, for the folks at XnView. It would be really cool if we could have a alpha value to specify here and allow that to go to 0. But since we don't have that, what I did is selected a green color, just made it super dark. This will be easy to select in Affinity Photo as a color range, and then we can delete it out. And then any partially transparent pixels that are left behind are so close to black, we're just not even going to see them. So we'll say OK and create, and that should generate a second one of these sheets with a value of 0001. And there it is. Okay, we've got that. And sure enough, we've got this dark green background. So let's close that and switch over to Affinity Photo here and File Open. Let's get that file sheet 1 open. And then I'll just use Select Sampled Color. Now, of course, I've practiced this already, so it's already sampling the color. I could just double click here and click and drag, and that's the color I want. And I apply. And so I have all that dark green selected and just hit delete to get rid of it. And so now I've got this wonderful transparent background, and that is everywhere, even in, if I zoom in here, you can see that in the little gaps and everything, they're all transparent. Great. So Control S to save that, close it in here, and minimize this and double click. This is cached. Let's just close this, go from one folder to another and find it again. double click. Okay, yep, we're transparent. Wonderful. So to bring this in Unreal Engine, all we have to do is drag and drop right out of XnView into Unreal Engine. And now I've got a new sheet of logos. Control S to save, double click, just double check. That's exactly what I want. All right. Now we can go ahead and start building up our level from scratch. So right click, I will go ahead and, you know what, instead of making a completely blank level, I'm going to do File, New Level, and choose the 3D Motion Graphics template. That at least gives me some lights and a post-production volume. I don't really need any of the physical objects here, so I'm going to select the cloner system and Control Select the props, which is all of these background items, and just hit delete. Yes, I do want you to delete all those children as well. And now I've got a blank level, but I've got a little bit of lighting ready to work with. Okay, let's go to motion design mode and add a cloner. Double click on grid. Now we've got a grid cloner, except that I want to create my own object to clone. So expand this, delete the default clone, and go to 3D shapes. I'll double click on the cube. The main thing that I want to do with this really is just add a little bit of bevel to make it so it's not a pure CG perfect edge. So I'll just add a couple pixels of bevel there and drag that into the cloner. The cloner, I'm only going to need, kind of one row vertically. So let's change our count in Z to 1. And let's do our X and Y at like 500 each. 500 and 500. Let's make sure we're looking through our rendering camera. So I'm going to choose the 35mm camera and make sure I'm looking through the lens. Alt left click, orbit around a little bit. Okay, so we've got the start of our clones here. Now I need to define the material that's going to go on there. Okay, so content browser, right click, and I'll choose material. Let's just call this demo material. Control S to save, double click to open it up. And here is a basic material in Unreal Engine. The inputs here are just like the channels that we have in Material Designer. So I'm going to work with base color first. I'd like to have a dark blue background. So what I'm going to do is create a color node here, and a color is really just 3 values, red, green, blue. And so in mathematics, we'd call that a 3-value vector. So if I hold the 3 key down on my keyboard and tap in an empty area of the graph with my mouse, click, I get a color node. It's a 3-value vector. So now I can double click on this color, and let's set this to a nice dark blue. That looks good. Okay. And then to use this, we just connect this to our base color input, right? That's base color. And now we see base color. Metallic is set to 0, so it's kind of dielectric rubber plastic. Roughness is 50%, specular is 50%. All this is good. So let's save that. And then we need to apply it to our cube. Now, our cube is not actually visible in the scene right now. It is hidden because what we're looking at here is the cloner. So if I select the cube, what I can do is change my material type here from simple to being an asset. And then I'll go ahead and drag this new material into that asset, and we should see everything update with a nice blue. Okay, great. So now we need to figure out how to put our logos on here. So let's bring our material up, and we want to put the logos over top of this blue. So first of all, I'll take my logos and drag them into the Material Designer, and they have red, green, blue, and alpha. So to overlay these, we use what's called a linear interpolation, or LERP. So if I right click, I can type in linear, and here it is, linear interpolate under math. I'll select that, and it takes 2 inputs and an alpha channel. So of course we're going to use the alpha channel from our logos. And one little quirk of this is that A is the background and B is the foreground. If A value alpha is 1 or white, then we need that logo to be in the B input. So red, green, blue from the logos goes into B. The blue, red, green, blue goes into our A input, and then the alpha will overlay the logos on top of the blue. So let's drag that into our base color. And now we've got our overlay. If I hit save, it gets applied to the clones. wonderful, except that, of course, we're seeing all of the logos, not just one. So this is why we're using the material graph instead of material designer. We're going to use a special node in here. I'm just using the right mouse button to kind of pan around. So if I right click and type in the word clone, I get clone effector parameters. And this is a special set of data that we get anytime a material call is coming from a clone. So there's position and color and all kinds of things. What we want to take advantage of is this random value. This will be a random value for each of our clones. So to put that to use, what we're going to take advantage of is another unique node called Flipbook. So if I right click and type in flip, I can choose Flipbook. Now this is designed for 2D animations where a sprite sheet is actually a set of frames for an animation. So the first one would be frame 0 and 1 and 2, etc. So you could feed a time value into the animation input here, and that would indicate to the flipbook which of the frames of the animation to display at any given time. We're going to cheat, and instead of having a 0 to 1 animation phase, we're going to take our random clone value and put that into animation phase. These random values are 0 to 1, animation phase wants 0 to 1, and so this will randomly select one of the images from this sheet. The only thing is we do need to tell the flipbook how many images there are in terms of number of rows and columns. So like I made this color by holding the 3 key and clicking, I only need one value because the same value is used for rows and columns. So I'm going to hold the number 1 down on my keyboard and tap in the graph. I get a single value, and I'll set this to 9 since I have 9 across and 9 down, and then I'll connect this to both my rows as well as my columns. And finally, the result is a UV, meaning I'm going to select the X and Y, or U and V, of an individual logo or an individual item in this sheet based on the random number that's coming into animation phase. So I'm going to take this UV and feed it to the texture sample for the logos, and now we get a single logo. You can see that better if I change this to a plane, and there we go. So without this connection, right click, and I should be able to break this link. I've got all the logos, but if I take the UV randomly selected by the animation phase using the random value from the clone effectors, we can go to UVs into the texture sample, and now we just have one logo. When I save this, it'll be applied to our clones, and then each clone will have one random logo. Boom. All right, so I mean, we could stop there if we wanted to, but there's a few things that would make this even better. One, there's not a whole lot of visual interest here. And two, I kind of like the idea of like looking at these clones diagonally, and I'd like to be able to turn these logos so they're right side up. So let's start with that. We'll go ahead and take advantage of the feature that is in our motion design shapes. So with the cube selected, we have in the material section a material UV area that we can adjust the UVs on the shape. So one of those things that we can adjust is the rotation. So I want to rotate these 45 degrees. So I'll go ahead to rotation here, type in 45. That was 45 the wrong way. So let's make that a negative 45. And there we go. Now our logos are right side up. But they are a little small, and we are seeing like on the corners here some hints of the other logos. So I want to increase the size of these logos, and we could do that with the scale setting in our material UV. Now this is a little bit inverted. If I were to increase this value, it's really increasing the number of tiles that I would see on any given object. So if I set this to 2, for example, the logos get smaller because now we're seeing 2 logos in every different direction. I mean, that could be useful for something, but I want to make my logos larger. So instead of going larger than 1, I'm going to lower this number. Let's try, say, 0.7. That's pretty cool. We're starting to fill up some of these cubes. Let's go a little bit smaller even, 0.5. There we go. So now our cubes are filling up with these close-ups of these logos. I'm going to go with that for now. Maybe a little bit smaller, so maybe 0.6. Okay. Now I want to add some visual interest, some variation in these clones, instead of just having them be kind of like this universal plastic. So one of the things I can do is add a roughness map so that we get some variation on these clones. So let me bring the material graph up here. I'm going to use my mouse wheel to roll back and zoom out a little bit so I have some room. And I want to add some grunge to this. So I'll go to content, and I've got the automotive materials, I've got twin motion materials, I've got some sci-fi packs, so all kinds of materials in here. So I'm going to type the word grunge, and there we have some grunge maps. Now I could further filter this, by the way, by clicking on the filter button and saying I only want to see textures. So now these are just grunge textures. To put them to use, I just need to, let's take this grunge mask and drag it in. And now it can be used in my material. And one thing I could do is just take the red, green, blue and connect that to, roughness, like our roughness channel in the material designer. Here is roughness on the input for this material. So here's my grunge, drag that into roughness and save. And now we've got some grime, essentially, on our clones. That's pretty cool, except that if we look closely, we could see that we're getting exactly the same grunge on every single clone. So to solve that, what we could do is cheat and reuse the UV output here that is selecting which of our logos is going to be displayed. We can also use that on our grunge texture. And once we save, now each one of these clones is going to have a different form of grunge. So we could try that with a different grunge texture. This is really just a node that has properties right here. If I take this grunge mask 3, click and drag it over here and save, we can get a different result and another result here. So there we go. Maybe I'd like to have a more natural aesthetic, so some wood grain. And in those automotive materials, there is a interior wood veneer. So VEN should be all I really need to find that. Let me just move the graph out of the way. And there it is at the end, wood veneer. So I can go ahead and select this wood veneer and drop that in there and save. And now we've got a little bit of a different wood grain on each one of these blocks. So one thing though is this is kind of a cool look. Like we might like it just like this, where it looks like all the color and even the logo is stained onto our wood blocks. But what if we want to make the logos look like they're painted or decaled on? Well, what we could do is attenuate our roughness so that anywhere the alpha channel is white here in our logo, then we have a perfectly smooth roughness so that it's just shiny, right? So what we could do is take this lerp, Control D, I'm going to use that again. I'll use our alpha channel from our logo, and I want to have the background A be the wood veneer, so I'll connect that to the A. And now for B input, I can just enter a value, let's say 0.2. So it's going to be a very low roughness, 0.1, really shiny. So that will be a solid value for anywhere the alpha channel is white, and anywhere else it'll be wood veneer. And so I can click and drag this into roughness and save it. And there we go. We have like these little shiny decals. Another little trick I can do is I could take this and say, well, let me have the alpha channel, which is a value of 1 white, where we have the solid logo, and it's 0 where we have wood. I could take that value and plug it into metallic, which would basically give me the look of like a shiny foil logo sticker. So take this alpha and connect it to metallic and save. Boom. And so now we have a metallic look to all of our logos. So lots of variation options here. It's pretty cool. I think what I'm going to do is get rid of the metallic. So just right click, break this link. And one last thing is maybe, remember that grunge mask? I could add a little bit of grunge to my logos so that they're not all pristine perfect. Give a little bit of life. So let's go ahead to grunge, and I'll drag that back in. And we only want this grunge to happen where there is logo. So we will apply this as a background to our roughness. And that will be on the using the logo alpha. So only the logo will get this grunge roughness and the rest of the block will get the wood roughness. And there we go. So we've got these kind of beat up little logos on the blocks and we are all set. So that's a quick introduction to the material graph. Now, if we close that, the last thing I could do is just add some more variation to these clones. And so I'll go ahead and select the cloner and let's go down to range in here. Yeah, range. And let's vary their height. So actually, we'll offset them in random directions in all 3 axes. So the range is set, and I'll just vary by like 2 centimeters in each direction, X, Y, and Z. There we go. So there's some randomness there. And then maybe I want to set them into motion. So let's scroll down and create an effector that's going to do some wave noise. I'm going to set the shape to be unbound so that all the cloners get affected by this, regardless of where the effector is. We will set this to being a procedural pattern, will be directional wave, and let's just have them going up and down, so value of 2, and let's get some value into the pan. So now we have some motion going on. Maybe we increase the frequency, maybe we increase the frequency some more, and there we go. So now we've got our logos and they are moving and we've got some variation. If I like this distribution, great, I'm all set. If I want to try some different distributions, I can select the cloner and change the random seed right here and I'll get different distributions. So if I hit 0, I've got this one, 15, I get a different distribution and so on. So lots of functionality in here, lots of flexibility. I hope this helps. Until next time, have fun.